Alright, so we're back once again, and today we're going to be going over some of the players that I've had the pleasure of meeting in the last while I've spent playing World of Warships on my stream. Now, of course, some of these players are ones that I've met, as I've just said, but some of them are the types of player tropes that I've seen myself falling into as I played more and more ranked games, and progressively lost my mind more and more as time has gone on. Maybe I should stop playing ranked and switch back to randoms. Nah, that seems too logical. So, let's get into some of these players. And if you want to watch me bump into some of these players in real time, you can follow my stream at twitch.tv/thedarkcalling. So first up, we got the player that exclusively plays CVs, almost exclusively, and then decides to switch classes. Have you ever seen a ship that is just doing things that are a bit, how do you say, questionable? You know, like a Smolensk that says flat broadside to an enemy Thunder with HE loaded, or a Holland player that yellows a cap with a Marceau, Kleber and Smoland on the enemy team. Or even a Thunder that looks as though it's cosplaying a Gross occur first, which ends about as well as you'd expect. Well, when you do come across a player like that, there's at least a small chance that they're a CV player that has simply switched to another class for the first time in about 3 months. In order to confirm this possibility, you can always check their stats after the game ends, and if you see one of two things, then you can safely presume that they're of the switching CV player type. The first being, if you look at their stats and they're privated, then you can probably assume that they sit in the below 50% win rate column for a start, and more likely they play the game for the aesthetics and not actually, you know, winning. The other possibility, however, is that you check their stats and you see a very odd set of stats. For one thing, when you filter by CVs, you see that they sit in the 55 to 60% win rate range, and you think to yourself, whoa, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this player just had a bad game and is actually better than me at the game. Which, ironically enough, has happened to me multiple times. But that aside, if you then check other ship classes, then that's where the fun really lies. Because whatever the win rate was on CVs, you can be fully sure that it'll be 15 to 20% less on other ship classes, be it battleships, cruisers, or even destroyers. Usually much less than destroyers, if I'm being honest. So what does this mean in terms of practical things you can do when you spot one of these players on your team? Pretty much nothing. Just try to laugh at the absolute incredible gameplay that's about to follow, and I don't even think there's all that much benefit in checking their stats after the end of the game, as it might just make you more angry. Although, if they start messaging you after the game, calling you a noob, it might be a good way to get them to stop messaging you if you just start listing every single one of their win rates in each ship to them. Worked for me at least. On to the next player. So I thought I would include this player because for a long time I've been talking about others and how they're extremely inexperienced at the game. And this player is none other than the BB player that can't aim but still thinks they're good at the game. For the last few days, I don't know what's happening, but my aim has gone completely out the window, and as a result I've turned into a very angry, bitter player. Although, thinking that through now, I don't think that's changed all that much from usual, if I'm being honest. So I'm guessing we all know this player, but generally you don't notice them in particular until you watch them closely. It could be the Yamato player that with full HP, sitting 23 kilometers away from a cap at 10 minutes into the game, or they could even be the Slava player that can't hit that broadside Des Moines from 8 kilometers, even if the Des Moines player typed in chat that he was going AFK to pick up their kids from school. No, these players, sorry, I am so bad at aiming, there's a good chance I would miss even hitting those shots. I know the distinct way of picking out players like this is to look who is at the bottom of the leaderboard at the end of the game. Now, I'm not saying that damage dealt is the be-all and end-all to playing well, but when you're playing a tier 10 BB and effectively using it as one giant pinata for the enemy team, then there might be a big problem. So how did I fix my aiming problem? Honestly, I have no idea. I went to sleep, woke up the next day, and suddenly my aiming was better. Well, that and realizing if you tilt and semi-YOLO yourself into the enemy team within the first 5 minutes of the game, you're not going to have all that great of a potential for actually doing damage, and you might find yourself becoming a little bit flustered as a Minotaur, Smolensk and Kleber rip you to shreds piece by piece. But I only focus on the negatives here. What are some of the benefits of being this player? Well, remember when I said it's a little bit like being a piñata for the enemy team? Well, you're also going to be a piñata for your own team, only it's going to be an emotional piñata, as they rip into you for missing every single shot imaginable. Let's get along to the next player. So the next player I want to talk about is the player that plays exclusively tier 1, 2 or 3 and then stumbles their way into a tier 10 game for the first time and behaves like they're a super unicum based on their extensive knowledge, or extensive game knowledge that is completely based on low tier battles. I say battles, but they're basically just 20-minute YOLO sessions for each team. Usually this player, much like the very first player described, isn't found out until the end of the game when you decide to check their stats and find out they have 23 games on the Henry IV at tier 10 with a 17% win rate, and 5,000 games with the Caledon in tier 3 with a 50% win rate. Now, don't get me wrong, the problem here isn't the fact that they exclusively play at low tiers. It isn't even the fact that they play at tier 10 with little to no experience and do poorly. No, the problem here is that they play poorly at tier 10 when the magical strategy that worked at tier 3, i.e. YOLOing, gets very promptly shut down, and they then begin to complain and several different chat messages start popping up on the in-game chat. That simultaneously makes me want to rip my hair out and reach through the screen and slap some sense into the people typing the comments. Usually they go something like, "Oh my god, my team are such noobs." Even though they're the ones that think that radar doesn't exist in a tier 10 battle, other classics include, "I hate this game so much," even though they're the very same person that started their computer, logged into the game and pressed the battle button. "Tier 10 is so bad, wargaming is ruining the game." Which in some respects could be true, but in this situation it points a lot more to the person's inability to actually play World of Warships than it points to wargaming's inability to produce a semi-functioning game. But let's not get into that. I could go into a 50-minute, 20-minute long rant on the topic, but I feel I would just be wasting both our times if I did that. On to the next player. So now we move on to the player that grinds 400 ranked games just to reach rank 1 and thinks they're a Unicom level player. As a result, and like most of these players I have mentioned in this video, this player bears absolutely no resemblance to myself. No, absolutely none at all. So what would make someone want to invest so much time into a game mode that really doesn't really map all that well onto actual player skill and has a much higher likelihood to make you want to quit the game when you see yourself losing a star at the end of the game than playing? Why do people choose to play this game mode versus the nice, gentle, random battles where everyone knows what they're doing and everyone loves to give each other compliments, are nice to each other all the time, and never ever resort to personal insults? I'm sorry, I couldn't keep talking like that. The lies were just too much. So what motivates me as someone who at this point is an exclusively ranked player to keep playing ranked? Well, it's mostly related to players, and when I say players, I don't actually mean the type of players that play, let's say, random battles versus those that play ranked battles. No, it comes down to basically the sheer amount of them. In my opinion at least, when you enter a game mode with 7 players on each team, the decisions you actually make tend to matter at least a little bit more than the other scenario when you have 12 players on each team ramming into each other, hurling projectiles and sometimes insults at each other to varying degrees of intensity, ranging from your mum jokes to things that could probably put you on some type of register. But getting back to the reason that this player is a problem ties back into, I guess, the running theme of the video to an extent. People really overestimating their level of insight into the game and making it seem much greater than it is. Because, be under no false illusions, ranking out will not tell you how good a player is, but how quickly they rank out will tell you a much greater deal about how good they truly are. Now, this could be part of the video where I tell you how quickly I ranked out, but I'll leave that up to you. Hint, it was less than 400 games. I think. Next up, and perhaps the final player I want to talk about today, partly because I can't think of many others at the moment and, well, I need to go play World of Warships to get the footage that you're watching right now. I hope it's a good game. And that player is none other than the person who pre-decided that the game is lost basically solely on the fact that they lost their last game. I don't know why, but I seem to be bumping into these players more and more as of recent. It could be the fact that I'm playing more ranked, where watching the stars slowly disintegrate in front of your eyes after losing a game, kinda like the way Spider-Man did in the Avengers, could cause someone to have a little bit of built-up rage that is almost understandably released on 6 poor players that happen to be on the person's team in the following game. Now, how will you know when you met a player like the one I'm describing? Well, they'll very quickly let you know by doing one of the following things. Aggressively pinging every ship in existence if they perceive it to be doing even the slightest mistake. Another surefire way to figure out which player this is on your team is generally by, well, they'll just let you know by simply typing in chat just as the game begins something to the effect of, "Guys, this game's already over, GG, I've lost the last 5. And it's at that point you should realize that you're basically going to be playing the game 6v7 or 11v12, because this player is going to be so tilted out of their mind that they're going to make the earth look like it's tilted properly on its axis. But regardless, you're going to have to pray that either this player doesn't YOLO into the enemy team while simultaneously hoping that you and your team can carry the extra load and win the game. Or you could just lose the game. I mean, it's only a star, but then you might start tilting after that and repeat the cycle. I don't like where this is going, so I better end it here. So that pretty much sums it up for another video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to watch me play as these players, or maybe meet some of these players in game, I stream every day at twitch.tv/thedarkcoin. A follow would be greatly appreciated, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, that's cool. But until next time, I'll see you all in the next one.